Hey guys, thanks for listening during lunch. We appreciate everybody sticking around and hearing us out. We'll do quick introductions and then kind of go through the arc of our partnership and how our relationship has evolved over time. It's a true, like Taylor said, SC Tech Talk success story. We originally met, I think, well, Austin, our CEO, spoke, right?
2021.
2021. Our CEO, Austin, spoke, and since then had a great relationship. We'll get into the details of how it happened later, but I'll introduce myself and let Tobias speak and introduce himself. My name is Jake Hoffman. I'm the CTO at Gnosis Freight, Charleston-based logistics technology company. International freight is our specialty, so everything around containers moving around the world. All of our company is based in Charleston. We've grown from when we met in 21, we probably had 6 or 7 employees, and now we have 35 employees, all in the tech center in downtown Charleston.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. So, as I said, my name is Tobias Hacker. I'm from Continental Tire here. Our headquarters in Fort Mill, South Carolina. I always say we are the last resort up to North Carolina. I'm in charge for logistics for the whole Americas. And one part of it, and actually I recapped it this morning a little bit, was during the pandemic, during the crisis, we had some really big issues with ocean freight, right? And Byron mentioned this morning, that the Port of Charleston had a significant revenue 2022 out of the merge costs. So yeah, no problem, Byron, the drinks are on me. And we also had our friends from Maersk here, and also they did a good amount of money with us on the detention cost side of things. So it is what it is. And last but not least, we learned from Andy that supply chain, there are no victims in supply chain. I think my sales VP probably thinks differently about that. So it was a really nice, interesting discussion during the morning, and I saw a lot of things which happened to Continental and probably to most of you during that time. And this was also one reason why we reached out to Gnosis in 2022, based on the tech talk here. And we talked about the situation we have with our demurrage and detention costs. And we see, hey guys, can you help us with that? Do you have a chance to help us with transparency, help us with data, get us kind of a better truth than what we see so far from the ocean carriers and our forwarding partners?
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Tobias. Good. Awesome summary there. And I think that is a great way to kind of frame the conversation of what we'll talk about. Talking about when we first engaged, like the first steps about like what position was Continental Tire in, how could we come and help, talk about how the relationship has expanded now to what we're doing currently, and then some of the stuff that we're looking at for doing in the future. So like Tobias said, the first thing, the first conversations we ever had were about demurrage and detention, about not just, hey, how, like, let's reduce it, but really at that point it was transparency into what was currently costing them money. Like, they would get these reports from this freight forwarder, this ocean carrier, and all of these different places, and then someone's entire job at that point was to take all these different reports, use VLOOKUPs and everything in Excel, and aggregate all the information just to at that point be like, okay, this is how much money we owe. But then by the time that you do that, the information is static, right? So it's not being live updated. So by the time you put all these reports together and everything, it's old. And so that's kind of the mantra that we live by at Gnosis. That's like, hey, it's cool that you have these reports and everything, but as soon as you do that and you take it out of a live environment where the data is being updated, it immediately becomes stale data. And so that was kind of the first thing we did was, how can we, and all right, cool, I'll take one more step back, that in order for us to do that at Gnosis, we have our own data, our own track and trace algorithms where we're not relying on getting data from a report from the freight forwarder, or an EDI message from the ocean carrier and so on, is because we're getting all the data ourselves. And so we become an agnostic source of all this track and trace data for Continental Tire to actually surface to them, hey, this is our information from all these different sources aggregated and then telling you what's going on with your supply chain.
And this actually was a really big helper for us because we got all those reports from the forwarders, from the ocean carriers, from websites. And most of the time, they were not accurate, they were not the same. Even the same source sends 3 reports, every report had a different timestamp in, a different kind of information. And at the end, if this all gets down to the point where you have significant costs behind it, I mean, we are not just talking about a couple of $1,000s here, you get to the point where you really lose trust. And not you as a logistics guy or your department, it comes further down into your organization. So where then the finance department starts asking you a lot of questions, internal audit starts a lot of questions, and we really got to the point where with the help of Gnosis, we got to the point that we could really start building up trust again into data. And we could also go back to the forwarder, to the ocean freight carrier, and discuss with them about their data source and their data quality in order to reflect that some of the costs are probably not correct calculated, wrong timestamps used. And this also helped us at the end to discuss with them invoicing and get costs reduced here.
Right, and it's great points, and it's not. I'm not going to try to defend the other side of the transaction, but for demurrage and detention, as many people in this room know, it's really, really confusing. You know, you have these giant spreadsheets of your contracts with all of your freight forwarders and ocean carriers, and so for the demurrage piece, you know, you have 4 days working, but then there's a holiday or there's something happens at the terminal where your container wasn't available on a certain day. So there's all these complexities that go into calculating all this information. And so that's where it was, you know, say the freight forwarder or the ocean carrier that's trying to provide Tobias with all this information, they're having to work and sort through all these exceptions and everything just to give that information to Tobias. And then on the opposite side, Tobias is trying to aggregate that and then see is it accurate and how do we pay it and what do we do from that standpoint. And so that's where we've done a ton of work on giant database of all these demurrage and detention contracts, all of the live data feeds from all the terminals and the ocean carriers, and automatically sorting through all these exceptions and everything to surface that source of truth for the Continental Tire team to be able to come back with something and say, hey, this is actually what happened, here's our contract, here's our rate, and so on.
And this was also something, especially my team really enjoyed working with Gnosis. It was the flexibility. I mean, we have several contracts, different contract rates, structure, and the Gnosis team was very, very flexible to kind of adjust to our needs and work with us through those contracts, through those different data sources, and helped us to find an easy way and let's say a good way also in terms of visibility. A way so that we at the end could go back to our internal clients, to our finance team at the end, to my favorite sales VP, and could start really showing them one type of report, one type of source, so that we could use to explain it first, but then also consistently once a month, for example, then also report back on it. And as soon as you always use the same way to present your data, to show your data, and also to show your improvements, to be fair, because we did a lot of improvements as soon as we gained the transparency, then actually your internal customers at the end of the day start becoming happy again, at least a little bit, because we still had a lot of containers waiting somewhere. But this kind of gaining back the trust and also gaining back that you really work on the issue helped us a lot here, and my team really appreciated the support from the Gnosis team, and I'm probably sure there was a lot of time and efforts which went in there, some sleepless nights, but at the end we got something really good together.
Right, thanks Tobias, thanks for those kind words, and I'll say that was, you know, the focus of the beginning of the relationship was getting full transparency, getting costs under control, putting contracts in and all that, so that where the Continental team can have that visibility. But then once you do that and you take control of the cost, there's all these other benefits to having this predictive visibility to the future. And that's where we'll kind of get to the next part of the conversation, talking about present state, and what we're working on today is, you know, that was kind of like the reactive state of it. You're reacting to stuff when it's in demurrage and detention and trying to manage those costs. But now the proactive phase of this is if you can forecast to a much more accurate degree than previously when you're aggregating these reports together, live data is telling you have 200 containers that are getting off of a container vessel tomorrow. That's a different planning trucks to go pick it up, planning labor at the warehouse to unload the container than if you have 50, right? And so being able to have that accurate information moving forward is a totally different application of the same information that we've started to take advantage of with the Continental team.
Exactly, and here we are also quite happy about the way that the Gnosis tool is set up as a portal, an online portal. So what we can do, or what we did, is we give access for our 3PLs, for example, to the system. We have our inside sales team access to the system. So we really rolled out that information, that dashboard, and at the end the transparency into the organization. So it's not any longer that someone of my team needs to receive all those calls, call the people back, all the emails back and forth. Now we really bring that information to the colleagues, to the team member, to our 3PLs who should use and work with that on a day-to-day basis in order to predict the ETAs, to plan their work, to inform the customers when the tires will be there. And this helped us now significantly to get back out of this, let's say, reactive state where the phone was ringing the whole day. Where are the tires? Where are the tires? Into the point where we say now, okay, I checked in the platform, I already know where the tire is, I already informed the customer.
Right, and that's, you can source information from all these different places for maybe a vessel ETA to Charleston. We'll use Charleston for example, right? We're here in Charleston. So you can source that information for a vessel ETA to Charleston, but then Continental Tire's specific logistics system, the way that their inbound distribution centers and everything work is maybe it's coming into Charleston, it's getting on the rail and going to Greer, they have a truck pick it up in Greer and take it to their distribution center. So with all those things outside of that just vessel ETA to Charleston, since we're digesting all of Continental Tire's container movements over the past X months, years, days, whatever it is, we're able to use how their specific supply chain works to help them predict what's going to happen in the near future. So to Tobias's point about planning labor, if you have so many containers arriving at a distribution center on a certain day, if we can help them forecast that at least, a week into next week, they can extrapolate that down to how many people should we have to unload containers at our warehouse next week. And those are the kind of extended intelligence pieces that the previous reporting systems and things weren't giving to them, that allows them to kind of really take that data and apply it in a really practical and meaningful way.
Yeah, and now we're even going beyond that point, so that we are discussing now predicting actually, or taking our inventory on the water, what we call goods in transit, and using those goods in transit actually in predicting our inventory development. So that's something which we want to look into, we want to discover. Because in the past, or actually even today, it is more like, okay, we have safety stocks, and the safety stocks are more or less based on inventories here in US, in the warehouse, available for sales. And then we have all those goods in transit, majority coming from Europe, which comes on top. Whenever then you see fluctuations in your demand or in your production, you always need to run through that wave first, through your goods in transits first, before you actually then see any changes. And we are talking about 3 to 4 months easy, which is in today's world, it's a ton of time. And the idea is now, by having really reliable, predictable ETAs, to consider that inventory which is still in transit, so on the water, into our sales, so that we can actually act and react in a faster way, in a more agile manner, on certain demand changes or on certain production changes within our supply chain.
Right, and that's the term that we use is kind of the warehouse on the water, right? Is the goal of this is to be able to get those predictive ETAs to the warehouse. And then since you can have the predictive ETAs to the warehouse, and then we can join the container tracking data, that predictive ETA to the warehouse, with the commercial invoice, packing list, that kind of information telling you what's in there, and joining that with the ERP to actually, okay, what does our inventory look like 9-10 days from now? What is these customer orders, how do they stack up against what's actually going to be in our warehouse in 2 weeks? And to Tobias' point, that's where we're moving to now, and we're working towards in the near future for that to allow them to sell into inventory or to do different things where it's not just a big black box from the time it's on a vessel till it gets in their warehouse, then they decide where things go.
Also again here I want to highlight it's the flexible and agile way we work with Gnosis on this. Especially I would say the younger generation or my younger team members, they really enjoyed it. It's more their kind of work style. Is grabbing the phone and say, hey, I need this and this, and I need it now, as usual. But this kind of, and it's at the end startup mentality. So that startup mentality brought a lot of good vibes and good movement and fresh air into a, let's say, more old school's logistics department's way of doing things, and it actually helped us a lot with getting our I call it the youngsters, so our newest colleagues more engaged into the topics, and they're coming up with really some startup ideas at the end. And this is let's say from a personal perspective something I want to highlight, which I was quite happy about to see that. Sometimes we even need to remind one or the other, hey, you're still working for us, yeah. But that's the way. We saw that earlier today in the tech talk where we talked a little bit about it, startup culture in South Carolina, how agile South Carolina is, and from that perspective, I can really say this. For Gnosis and for our relationship and partnership, even if we are not really a startup, we love to be one, but we are not. We get a little bit of the startup vibe, at least in our logistics department, and I really appreciate it.
That's awesome. Thank you, Tobias. And echoing that point, like I mentioned at the beginning that our company is based in Charleston. We're proud of that. We recruit out of College of Charleston and out of the local area, but we also bring people. We have friends. We've recruited engineering talent from Georgia Tech and Atlanta and some of those regions there. But it's awesome for us for things like this, because we go to the TPM, the big conference in California, and we go to Chicago, and all that stuff that's going on, and we participate in those. But it's always, we're proud to be a part of things like this, where it's our business worldwide, but being local here, that we're really excited to be a part of. And then to Tobias' point, we hope to continue our partnership with Continental Tire and keep expanding on their business and make, as they move things through Charleston and Greer and everything else that we're doing in the Southeast, to make everything flow as seamlessly, efficiently as possible. Does anybody have any questions? Yes?
Yeah, thanks for the talk, first of all. It's a very, very interesting topic. As a company and as a team ourselves, we're looking into this topic aggressively as well, hoping to provide that level of information that's reliable enough for our clients to be able to plan better their inventory and sales and all these kind of things, right? I was wondering, because you mentioned just now that you're able to predict 7 days, for example, what's going to happen. How much data do you need to give that level of reliability for that prediction? And following that question, do you have ambition to predict even further, let's say 14 days, 3 weeks
Sure.
from now, and for that prediction to be accurate enough for clients to rely on? What sort of data we're looking at, like in terms of how many years going back you need?
Right. So the way that we always frame it is, we're going to take all the information we have to give you the best estimate. And for us, the more time till that DC ETA is the data point we'll give. The more time between now and then, the more variability there is. Because there's things that happen that are outside of our control, that's outside of our algorithms predictability of a container for some reason gets stacked at the bottom of a container stack in the terminal yard, and where normal situations might be 3 to 5 days of discharge to outgate, that container's just there for 14. It's not anybody's fault except something, right? There's situations like that happen. So for us, we can say with certain confidence, and there's always a little asterisk on stuff when you're predicting in supply chain due to all the reasons I'm talking about. But as we get, so like the 7-day, that's a good example of like, hey, everything is moving according to plan. This is when, within this, that you can expect it to get there. That may be a day, a plus or minus a day, whatever that standard deviation is, as we're continuing to evaluate that. But then as soon as the next milestone happens and it gets on the rail, the train departs from Charleston headed to Greer, or it's got an appointment in Greer to be picked up, whatever it is, as soon as that next data point gets actually happens, that window shrinks. And it's a dynamic thing that's continually happening. It's the variability is super wide when it's getting loaded at the in Europe at the origin facility, and then it's shrinking and shrinking throughout the entire journey, right? And so we're always trying to get more and more accurate with that. It's tough to say like how much data we need to predict something, because if we took all the data before COVID and then tried to predict something during COVID, it wouldn't have done anything, right? And then you take everything that happened during COVID and try to predict now, and it doesn't happen. So there's always different parameters of adjusting how your system learns that will help you to predict better moving forward in the future.
Yeah, thank you.
And what I just can highlight here, you can really see that system learning. I mean, that's something which we could see as more data the system gets. You could really feel, okay, now the system is learning and it's picking up and get better and better and better. And this was something interesting to see. And it which gives you also more and more, let's say, trust into the data. Because at the beginning, it's clear you do not expect, let's say, wonder. But then but if you follow that learning curve of the system, then you kind of see it learns, it gets better, it really hits more often the exact date, and that was good to see. So then you really understand there is something going on in the background, in the magical black box, I call it, so that the prediction becomes more and more reliable.
Yeah, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. I'm assuming you must have some certain level of confidence before you can plan your on-water warehouse into the sales operations, right? So,
as we keep going into that and keep moving that forward, there will always be confidence interval, however we just determine to show that to sales, show that to whoever. Because I mean, you could say, okay, with all of our predictions, we go out and we have a 99% chance that it's going to be there by this date. But then you go back 2 standard deviations or whatever, and it's like, okay, on average, it's going to be there 2 weeks before that. You don't want to tell them it's going to be there 2 weeks later than it actually gets there. So it's just a matter of adjusting to what their sales team, what their operations team wants, and communicating how our system will work, and then working towards a solution